Hi, my name is Natalia, and I'll talk about deployment of React and Next.js applications with CDK. What we'll cover in this talk is first we'll give a short introduction to CDK, since this is an introductory session. Then we'll talk about two ways of deploying React applications. First, we will deploy a Next.js application with Amplify and CDK. And then we will talk about CDK patterns, and we will go into deploying a React application with CDK patterns. So what is CDK? CDK is a framework to define your infrastructure as code and provision services through CloudFormation. It creates CloudFormation stacks that consist of constructs that map into AWS resource. A construct maps into one or more AWS resources. For example, S3.bucket maps onto a bucket in S3. Constructs are represented as types in the programming language of your choice. So CDK supports multiple languages: TypeScript, JavaScript, Python, C#, and as of beginning of April, Go in developer preview. CDK allows us to utilize CloudFormation to provision complex and scalable AWS infrastructure in a repeatable manner. You can use it to provision new environments more efficiently, making it easy to build multiple environments. Here we have an example where we define an app with a single CDK stack, and that stack contains or defines an S3 bucket. Any resources defined here will later on be deployed onto one of the regions in an AWS account. So let's go over this in details. We have a CDK day stack, and that stack extends stack base class. We define a constructor that accepts scope, ID, and props, and then we invoke the base class constructor with received scope, ID, and props via super. And next we move on to defining a S3 bucket constructor. And that constructor takes three parameters: this, which is referring to the stack that this S3 bucket will be added to, ID of the resource, which is going to be my CDK bucket, and properties defined. So here we will be turning versioning on. We'll block all of the public access to the bucket, and we'll also add server-side encryption with a master key managed by S3. So today we'll talk about two ways of deploying React applications with CDK. First, we will deploy a Next.js app using AWS Amplify construct library for CDK. And then we will deploy a React website using S3 React website pattern. But before we jump into deploying our application, let's talk about AWS Amplify. So Amplify is a set of tools, services to develop, deliver, and manage your web and mobile applications. You can make changes easily and easily deploy with only few commands or clicks. You can push changes to version control all through Amplify CLI. You can configure your backend using Amplify CLI or admin UI, and you can use Amplify libraries and UI components to connect your app to your backend. You can also set up continuous workflow and deployment, and this is something that we will be doing in our demo. And any failed deployments won't affect your production traffic. You can also add feature branch deployments, which means that after connecting your first branch, you can create a new feature branch deployment and have main and develop used to test feature without affecting your production. So Amplify Framework consists of Amplify CLI, which is a toolchain to create, integrate, and manage AWS services for Amplify app. Amplify Console, which is a sort of a control center for your full stack app. You can host your front end web app over there. You can set up your CI/CD. You can initialize and access your admin UI. Next, we have libraries. Amplify offers open source client libraries to build mobile and web apps. Next, we have UI components. Amplify provides a drop-in UI components for authentication, storage, and interactions. And last but not least, we have Admin UI, which is a fairly new addition to Amplify Framework, and it provides a visual interface for modeling data, adding authentication, authorization, and managing users and groups. So these are some features and tools available in Amplify Framework. So we have API, storage, and data store, authentication, functions, user management. So we have all of this. Why would we need CDK in all of that? So CDK gives us more control and enables us to define more detailed and more complex architecture with fine-grained properties, and it offers better integration with existing pipelines. And it also lets us use preferred language to define our infrastructure. This is an architectural overview of the application that we will be deploying. We will be creating code commit repository, Amplify app, API gateway, and Lambda. And all of this will be defined and deployed using AWS CDK. CDK will be converted to CloudFormation template, which will be deployed in the target region to create our resources. We will be adding API Gateway REST API that will enable communication between our Next.js app and Lambda. We will also configure our Amplify application to connect to a newly created code commit repository, and this will trigger Amplify continuous deployment pipeline. And at the very end, Amplify will generate a URL for our Next.js application, which will make our application accessible on the internet. So let's jump in and deploy our Next.js application. First, we will create our Next.js application, and we'll do this by running npx create a next app. Now we will seed it into a newly created app, CDK day app, and we'll open this in VS Code. So this is a Next.js starter application. We will, however, make a few changes to it, and not many. We'll edit index.js, and we'll do that by adding use effect hook that will showcase the functionality of the Lambda and API gateway REST API that we will be creating with CDK later on. If we run npm run dev now, we'll be able to see how our application looks like. So as you can see, this is just very simple Next.js application. There is this message, something is not working now. After we create our Lambda and API gateway REST API, we will be seeing a different message over here. There's a couple of more things that we need to do before we move on to working with CDK. We have to create amplify.yaml file. So this file is necessary for Amplify to build and then deploy our Next.js application. So we have set the base directory to out. If this was the React application, this would be set to build. With Next.js, it has to be set to out for Amplify to be able to build our application. And last, we have to modify package.json file. And the only thing we have to change is set our build script to next build and next export. So let's just add that into next export. And that is it for our Next.js part. We will open a new terminal and we will create our directory for the infrastructure that we will be building. So let's make directory, let's call it CDK infra, and cd into it, and we'll initialize our CDK application by running CDK init language TypeScript. And this command bootstraps our cloud infrastructure service with all the necessary folders and files. As you can see, it created a lib folder, a bin folder, and several other folders for TS project with Node.js. And lib folder contains a file that we will be editing and where we will be defining our infrastructure. Now this is finished. The next thing that we will do is we will run npm run watch. And this will start our TypeScript compiler in a watch mode, which will monitor our project directory, and it will automatically compile any changes to our TypeScript files to JavaScript. So that will be running in the background. So we have to open a new terminal. And the next thing that we will be doing is we will install all of the modules that we will be needing to create our infrastructure today. So I'm just installing Amplify code commit, Lambda, and API gateway. And as well as installing it, we have to import them into our CDK infra stack. So that's all imported. First, we will create a code commit repository. So we'll do that, call this Amplify next app repo, and this will be a new code commit repository. We add it to our stack. So we're adding this, and then we'll give it ID of Amplify next repo. Next, we'll give it some properties. So it will be a repository name, which we will set to Amplify next app repo, and we'll give it a description as well. So we push description. This will be Next.js app free. That will just a simple description for our repository. So this is all done, and we can now deploy our application, and this should create our repository. So we can now run CDK deploy. So as you can see, it has created our repository. We can see it over here, Amplify Next App repo, and we have all the details. And we will be connecting this repository to our application later on. Next, we will add our Lambda and API gateway. Right. So let's start with Lambda. Call this hello CDK, and it will be a Lambda function. And again, this will be added to the stack. So we're calling this, and we'll give this an ID of hello CDK handler. And we will set execution environment, and we will indicate where is the directory, our Lambda code. And next we set the handler. So we'll give it a runtime. We'll set it to Node.js. It's going to be Lambda runtime Node.js. And next it will be code will be loaded from a Lambda directory that we will be creating in a second. Lambda code from asset Lambda. And the handler will be hello CDK.handler, which means that the file will be called CDK, hello CDK, and the function will be a handler function. So that's all done. And next, before we deploy, we will add API gateway, REST API, and our Amplify application. So let's define our API gateway first. So it will be a new API gateway. Run Lambda REST API. And again, we're adding it to our stack. So we're calling this. Endpoint. It will be backed by our hello CDK function. So the handler will be hello CDK handler. And we need to add CORS, cross-origin resource sharing. We need to enable that to allow access to resources. Let's save that before we move on. And let's add our Lambda directory. We're going to add it over here. So it's going to be called Lambda. And we said we'll call this hello CDK. Hello CDK. And it will be just a very simple Lambda function that will return a response. And we will see that message at the front end in our Next.js application later on. And now we will add our Amplify module. So let's go back to our CDK infra stack and let's add our Amplify. So we'll call this Amplify app. Just Amplify app. And this will be a new Amplify app. We have very helpful suggestions. and it will be added to our stack, and we'll give this an ID of Amplify Next App, and we'll give it one property, which will be source code provider, which means that it will be connecting to the code commit repository that we have created before. So let's set it to code commit source code provider. And the repository name was Amplify Next App repo we have created before. And the last thing that we will do is we will add a main branch to our Amplify app. Branch equals and last we will add a branch to our Amplify app. Add a branch and star branch, and now we can run CDK deploy. And when this is deploying, we will be connecting our application to our new repository. Connect our application to this repository in the new terminal. I'm going to initialize the repository. We'll add a new remote. Add all of the files. Commit all of the changes. And now this is connected. We can see that the changes that we have pushed have triggered Amplify CI/CD. So it is now provisioning our build, building it, and hopefully it will deploy soon. What we now need to do is we have to go back, and we can see that we have endpoint that we can add to our use effect hook. So we'll go back to our next application. We go to pages, to index.js, and we're gonna paste that URL over here. And then we'll push all of the changes. We should be able to again see that because we have pushed new changes to our repository, it has triggered our continuous deploys. And we should be able to see our application very soon. So now we can see that it has deployed. And if we follow this link over here, our application has been deployed, and we have the message from our Lambda, hello from CDK. So it is all working. And so that was one of the ways of deploying React applications with CDK and Amplify. If we were to deploy a React application, as I mentioned before, the only difference would be build settings. So you would have to make sure that you update amplify.yaml before you deploy your application. That's it for our Next.js application. Let's jump into CDK patterns. So the second way of deploying React applications will be using CDK patterns. CDK patterns is an open source collection of AWS serverless architecture patterns, and it's built using CDK and it references AWS well-architected framework. The idea behind it was to create patterns built and sourced and discussed by AWS heroes and developer advocates. And every pattern follows the same contract. You should be able to clone the pattern, install all of the dependencies, run npm run build, npm run deploy, and it should all deploy. The pattern that we will be focusing on today is an S3 React website pattern. And here is a possible architecture for the S3 React deployment pattern. However, out of the box, this pattern deploys a website to S3 only. You can add CloudFront Route 53 or AWS Certificate Manager by using CDK SPA deploy construct, which I will be showing in our demo. So let's jump in and deploy React application. So we will create a React website with CDK patterns. First, we will bring down a pattern for React website by running npx cdkp init S3 React website. And apart from creating a CDK app, this pattern will also create a React application with all of the dependencies required to run it. Now this is all done, and we can open this in our IDE. It has created CDK and website directory for us. Website directory is just a React starter template application. And if we look into CDK, we can see this SPA deploy construct, and it's a construct that makes it easy to deploy React or Angular websites. And what it does, it is creating a basic site by putting the website in S3. And it does it by telling it that index.doc is index.html and that website folder is in a build directory. And in addition to that, you can also add CloudFront Route 53, and you can do it by installing CDK SPA deploy construct. We will showcase this and we'll add CloudFront distribution. So first we will have to install CDK SPA deploy. And we will add this create site with CloudFront construct and deploy. Running npm run deploy. And what it does now is, if we look in package.json, it builds the website first, and then it builds CDK. So it basically is making sure that the website is built before CDK, and then it's deploying it. And now it has deployed. We can see two outputs. We have CloudFront domain and S3 URL. So if we follow one of them, we can see our React starter application deployed. If you would like to find out more about what we have covered today, for Amplify, the best place to look for answers and to start with is Amplify documentation. I have also found really useful tutorials and deep dives on AWS channel on Twitch. For CDK patterns, you can find everything about CDK patterns on cdkpatterns.com. And there is also a YouTube channel, Deconstructing AWS CDK Patterns, where Matt Coulter goes over CDK patterns in detail. And for CDK, if you're just starting with CDK, cdkworkshop.com is a really good place to start. And if you know a little bit about CDK, but you want to learn more, CDK Advanced Workshop.aws is great as well. Thank you for having me, and over to you.